Today we're looking at debugging in Flash. Debugging is an important step when you've got complex code which can be difficult to follow. Rather than using a lot of trace statements, it's better to make use of the debugger built into Flash. There are several parts to the debugging in Flash. The first is the concept of setting breakpoints. A breakpoint pauses the execution of your code. So in the middle of your program, at the breakpoint, the code is going to stop running. This allows you to inspect variable values and look at other things that are going on in the program. So let's begin with this example. So I've got a class called Debugging here. And within my constructor here, I've got some variables and I do some simple maths here. And I've got a couple of if statements and I've got a function call and I've got the trace as well. Okay, so let's work through this example step by step. So the first thing I've got is this variable, watch me. Okay, and it's a string type and it's got the value of A. So that's the initial value. So when we're going to debug, we're going to watch the value of watch me change when we use the Flash debugger. The very first thing we're going to do though is on this line, line 28, we're going to set a breakpoint. So a breakpoint will pause the execution of the code at this point. So just to set a breakpoint, just to the right of the line number, just click with your mouse. So just to the right of the line number. So that's one breakpoint. Then we have two more variables, two integer variables, 9 and 10. And we do some simple maths to work out the sum. Down here, line 32, we set the value of watch me to B. Originally, it was A, up here. We're going to add another breakpoint for on line 34, just there. And then we have some if statements. It says, if 9 plus 10 is equal to 21, we're going to use the trace statement to say, you stupid. Otherwise, we're going to say, no, I'm not. Okay? And finally, we're going to set one more breakpoint down here on line 40. So next to this function call called call me. And then we have a trace which ends the program. Let's have a look at this function call. It's very simple. Call me. And we just got two trace statements. And the first one saying most awesome function ever. And trace end of call me. Just indicate that we've finished with the function. So we've set some breakpoints just here, 1, 2, 3. And I put in comments for where you can set those breakpoints. So you're going to get this code and just experiment with it yourself. Now to enter the debugging mode, you have to press Control-Shift-Enter, or just go to the top here and go debug and click on debug there. So once you do that, we launch Flash's debugger. And here it is. So it's just a bit different to the normal execution of your program when you're testing it. On the left-hand side here, we've got the call stack. Down below here, we've got the variables. So this variables is where Flash is going to keep track of all your variables and their values. So you can see here that watch me, the initial value of watch me is A. Number 1 and number 2 and sum are undefined, meaning no value has been given to those numbers. And you can click on these as well to see a bit more detail about what's happening. Don't worry about this. There's a lot of detail there, but we won't go into that now. And also here. We're mainly just interested in the variables just here. We ran our code in the debugger and it's actually stopped where we set the breakpoint earlier. So line 28 is where we set our breakpoint, and that's where we've stopped executing our code. Now we're going to press up the top here. There's step over and there's also step in. The one we're going to use most often, because it does go line by line, is step in, and the shortcut key for that is Alt F6. I'm just going to click on it. So step in just takes us to the next line. Next line, next line. Now we're setting watch me to be. We set sum up here to number 1 plus number 2. So if you have a look at sum first, you go to sum here in our variables window, you can see it's set to 19. So we can see here our values assigned to number 1, number 2 and sum. And you can see watch me as well, which is A. But after this line is executed, so we're going to step into that. Now watch me is set to B. If statement here, and we're just saying if sum is equal to 21, we're going to say you stupid, else we'll say no I'm not. So let's step in. Okay, so sum isn't equal to 21, so we're saying no I'm not. Step in again, and we're at just before the call me function. Okay, now when you've got this code, I want you to experiment with 2 of these options in Flash. So experiment with step in and step over. First one we're going to do is step over. Okay, so when we click step over, we're not going to go line by line through this call me function. So step over basically means with a function call, stop going line by line. Okay, so let's try that. Just here, we're stepping over and we're not going to stop here or here. We're going to just run the function, but we are going to stop here. So experiment with this yourself to see exactly how it works. So step over. Okay, you can see we just ran the call me function and we paused here and our final trace statement. And we can step in or step in to finish. Now let's just run that again. So we're back to our normal editing window. Control Shift Enter again to run the debugger. But this time we're going to use step in and step out. So we can go through that again. Step in. Now just keep on clicking. Now I'm going to go step in again for this call me function. So it's paused. It goes to the function and it pauses there. And then step in again. Now there's an extra option up here now, which is step out. So basically step out means we're in a function, and now by clicking step out, we just want to exit the function. We don't want to go line by line through the function anymore. So let's just step out of it. And the shortcut key for step out is Alt F8. We didn't pause on this line. We just jumped straight back to here. And we can just finish it off by going step in, step in, step in, line by line. I want you to experiment with this code. Try step in, try step out, set a few breakpoints, and watch them in the variables window. So why would you use this debugger? Well, for simple programs, you probably wouldn't bother. You'd probably just use trace statements, which are fine for simple programs. But when you get to more complicated programs with lots of different variables, lots of different functions calls, and just things happening everywhere, then you'll probably find the debugger is really handy because you get a list of all the variables that your program is using and their current values. And you can also step through the code when you're trying to work out the source of problems, step through the code line by line and watch the variables change as you go through the code line by line. So yes, for complex programs, it's nearly essential. So please run this code and experiment with those options, and best of luck in debugging your programs.